Hey, what's up, guys? So today I want to talk about chapter 18 in Genesis, and this is the story of Abraham after he had received the tradition of circumcision as well as the H in his name. He went from Abram to Abraham, and that's shadowing the idea of when Jewish people speak and they say l'chaim, the H is symbolic of breath, and breath is linked into the idea of spirit. And I believe the reason why I can say that is because in the story of creation, God breathed life into Adam, and that gave him animated spirit, that gave him animated capacity to be this thing that showed up and was essentially an expression of life, right? So spirit is linked to H, and Abraham received the H because he proved he was listening to his intuition the entire time he was listening to God. In the beginning, when he left the hometown of Ur behind, all the things that were familiar to him, to follow his intuition, aka God's calling, which is symbolic of you having to leave all the things you find familiar behind when you have your ego death and you walk in alignment with your intuition and you don't doubt it, right? And you're gonna have ups, you're gonna have downs. Abraham had ups and downs. He went to Egypt and he fell victim to Pharaoh and was terrified. That was an extreme low. However, he then came back and saved his nephew Lot from the 4 kings and slayed them, which is an extreme high. These two polarizing events are symbolic of you. You have an extreme low, but an extreme low is a catalyst for an extreme high because you understand your dual nature. Without polarity, you wouldn't understand opposites. And opposites help you understand life, right? So if you have a judgment of what hot is, then you can understand what cold is, because if you experience the lack of what you think is hot, obviously that's going to be cold. And now you understand what those two things are. Neither of them are inherently good or bad. That's your judgment. So polarity is a good thing. So when Abraham was going through all that stuff, it's just you going through your spiritual journey. You getting circumcised or you receiving your H symbolically is you receiving more of your spiritual nature and leveling up in your consciousness, okay? So again, this is an occult mystic point of view. Take it with a grain of salt. Is it right or wrong? I have no idea, but it gives me more of a peace of mind to understand the Bible this way, because taking it literally for hundreds of years, I haven't been alive for that long, but for what feels like hundreds of years sitting in church, because it honestly was so boring. It wasn't captivating because I was so lost. It never made sense. But understanding it through symbolism gave me more of a peace of mind, because I understood, oh, this could possibly be about my psychology. You know, if anyone reads Neville Goddard, you understand he's big on that. And that's part of what really inspired me to read the Bible more, is to be able to understand manifestation for myself. But anyway, so I'm gonna start. And it says, after that whole thing of him like receiving his spirit, we're gonna begin in chapter 18. And it says, and the Lord, capital Lord, appeared unto him, meaning Abraham, in the plains of Mamre, and he sat in the tent door in the heat of the day. When the word Lord is used in capital letters, to me that means cosmic universal force. It doesn't mean any kind of personal relationship to you, meaning like you and God. What it means is just the general idea of energy, right? It has non-bias towards what you are, kind of relating to the Bible versus God is no respecter of persons, right? Depending on what you think is good and bad in your life, your judgment of that will then reflect back to you what your belief is, right? So if you think something is inherently bad for you to receive, then you won't receive it, right? You're going to remain in poverty in whatever it is you want to receive. But you think if something's very good to receive and you really admire that quality or thing, then you're going to receive that thing because your judgment is casted in that direction. Right? So that's why poor people typically, don't really think money is possible to receive. They were told it's evil, and that's what keeps them impoverished. If you really look at the most religious cities in the world, they're typically the ones that are kind of in desolation because of this kind of literal interpretation of whatever religion they're understanding. They make it seem like, oh, your people are born sinners and they're disgusting and they're pigs and you need to sacrifice yourself for everything that you have for a church. And it's like, well, who runs a church? It's not actual God, it's another person. And what are people? People are selfish because they're stuck in their egos when they want to power grab on you. And typically any institution, whether it be a business, religion, politics, these people want power. So how will they enforce power? They'll do it by fear-mongering you and making you feel small. It's kind of that simple. So that lends a hand again to the idea of why I think this is symbolic. But anyway, going back to the capital letter Lord. When you have Lord, again, it's the cosmic force of just energy in itself. You don't play with electricity if you don't know how to use it, right? If you're an electrician and you know how energy works, you can use it to your advantage, which is just the same thing as saying, if you understand manifestation, play with it because you understand how it works. You understand your mind and your heart and your emotions project into the 3D realm, whatever it is your subconscious beliefs are. So then you understand understand in the three-dimensional realm, you're going to experience whatever it is you're projecting. Play with manifestation. Play with the capital L-O-R-D because you get it. But some people, like I brought up before, the people who believe in poverty because they think they're born sinners, they don't know how to play with manifestation. And unfortunately, they get zapped time and time again, metaphorically speaking, because they don't know how to play with the electricity of manifestation, right? I'm sorry, so thirsty. Okay, so capital L-O-R-D is cosmic force, appeared into the plains of Mamre, and he sat in the tent door in the heat of day. Mamre is a place of strength, vigor, and fatness. When you think of fatness and you think of like royalty back in the day, understand that people who were heavier really were those of the rich and wealthy class, right? Those were a people of mass abundance. So when the word Mamre to me in Hebrew means abundance, essentially. And when you're in a plain, you're in an open, vast space. So if you're in an open, vast space without any blocks like mountains and valleys and whatever, it's very clean. It's very taken care of. You cleared so much. And when you clear so much of the old, guess what happens? The new comes in, depending on whatever it is you're calling in. So if Mamre means abundance, and Abraham is the one sitting in the tent door, which I'll explain in a little bit, but because he's sitting in the plains of Mamre, it means he's open to the idea of receiving abundance, okay? And he sat in the tent door. When you sit in a tent, in my opinion, it means you're dwelling in your mind. Your mind is linked to the idea of a tent because your tent is very easy to break down, and your tent is very easy to build up, right? Just like our thoughts. We'll think of something and be like, that's a great idea, and we'll really fixate on it and like work on it and like all this stuff, and then like something won't work, and then we'll fixate on it more, and then we'll have the opposite effect, right? We'll be so invested positively, and in a very short while, it'll be so negative, right? Because we're so what's it called? Entrenched in our mind's ideas. We're so entrenched in problem solving that we actually get in our own way. So a tent, because it's so easy to build and break down, it's fragile, is symbolic of the mind because your mind is very fleeting in nature, in a place of, for you to go back to somewhere safe. You don't go back to your mind to feel safe. Typically you go for a run, or you go for a walk, or you meditate, or you talk with friends because you're not thinking. Your mind isn't there. You're void of thoughts, and you're connected more to intuition, which is going within your home, right? Home or house in the Bible, symbolically, in my opinion, means going within yourself. And when you go home to yourself, what does that mean? You're connected to your spirit. So here, Abraham is sitting in the tent door, meaning he's in his mind, but he's in the doorway of the tent. And when you're in the doorway of your mind, it means you're in the theta state between your conscious awareness and your subconscious programs. The doorway is where you have to go to unlock what your subconscious beliefs are, to clear them out and then project something new and to program something new within you. And think of that as like the theta state. There's the idea of you being conscious and awake, right? And I believe that might be alpha or beta, and then in theta state you're kind of in hypnosis, and that's where you're most susceptible to receiving new ideas. That's why you study before you go to sleep if you're in school, because you'll memorize it the next day. There's something about theta state that's very good with rewiring your brain and what it is that's running your subconscious programs. Then you go all the way down, I believe it's in delta, which is deep sleep, where the subconscious programs start working while your conscious awareness isn't there, or your thoughts, okay? So the tent door is synonymous with theta state and hypnosis. And when you're in the heat of day is typically the brightest part of the day. And the brightest part of the day is where the most light is hitting you. So if you think of that in allegory, what happens when the most light hits you symbolically? The most conscious awareness hits you. The most utmost attention you could possibly have that's pure hits you, and light and mint. So here, after Abraham had received the H and received the tradition of circumcision, which is again just spiritual initiation into meeting your spirit in higher forms of consciousness, he's in this state of just meditation and purity and innocence, feeling abundant, feeling no lack, because he's in the plains of Mamre, which means he's open to receiving abundance because he's emitting abundance. He's sitting in theta state and receiving the most, and actually in the state of the most amount of awareness, the heat of day, right? So that's a lot to say right there in a jumbled amount of words, but maybe I'll try it one more time. So when you're in theta state and you're the most aware of what your thoughts are and your subconscious programs are, you understand how to debug yourself and how to keep the programs that serve serve you, and you rewire your brain because you're receiving abundance now. You're in a plane that is cleared out of all the old habits you used to have, and the Lord, the capital Lord, is returning onto you in karmic principle, meaning cause and effect. You're going to reap what you sow. Because you did the inner shadow work, you're going to receive abundance because you cleared out the old version of you. All right, so then we have verse 2. And he lifted up his eyes and looked, and lo, 3 men stood by him. And when he saw them, he ran to meet them from the tent door and bowed himself toward the ground. Here, when Abraham looks up, it's synonymous with you when you look up. When you look up symbolically, what does that mean? It is the highest point of your body. And what that is your crown chakra or your third eye, right? So when you look up, it means you're in tune with which is your higher nature. And 3 men stood by him, meaning he witnessed his physical manifestation in the 3D realm. It was in his 4th dimensional reality in the first verse, and now it's in his 3D reality in the second verse, meaning instant manifestation once you understand the theta state and the power of hypnosis and using your imagination and brain-heart coherence and things of that nature. So he saw his manifestation in front of him, and he left the tent door, meaning he left his meditation. He broke from 4th dimensional consciousness and went back into the 3D realm and met his manifestation in the physical plane, and he bowed his head towards the ground in front of them. And that's so beautiful, because what it means is he walked up to them in conviction, knowing he was the sole reason why they were there. He wasn't blown away. He wasn't confused. Oh my God, this is a miracle. I'll never be able to do this again, because that's what a standard human being does. They think that miracles are just a shot in the dark, but if you ever read the book A Course in Miracles, miracles are happening all the time, because miracles are just another way of saying manifestations or your prayers being answered. So when you walk in faith, when you have conviction, when you see clearly that it is what you want, of course the 3 men are going to pop up in front of you. Of course the manifestation you want is going to pop up in front of you. And what are you going to do when you experience it? You're not going to freak out. You're going to walk in conviction right up to it and know it's yours, because you experienced it in your imagination first. You planned for this. You prepared for this. You don't freak out and are overwhelmed by an emotional greeting when something finally works in the manifestation set point of view. What you do is you just say, I knew it was going to happen, because I asked for it, because I'm conscious and I'm aware of what I'm asking for. So the fact that he walked up to them, and instead of saying, hey, how's it going? My name's Abraham. What he did was he went like this, and he bowed. And he bowed because he said, thank you so much for being here. He humbled himself, even though he knew he created this whole situation to begin with. But when you bow, something very beautiful happens. You don't make your first interaction with somebody you meet or somebody you engage with your physical identity or your face. Your face is the most prominent feature that identifies you in the physical plane. Arguably, it is the most lust and sought out for thing on the human body that is marketed towards to pick and prime and to make better, right? Oh, you have eye bags. Oh, your eyebrows aren't thick enough. Oh my God, make your lips bigger. Oh my God, you have wrinkles on your whatever, your forehead and crow's feet, and man, your hairline's receding. How much do we hate our faces, right? Because we're so fixated, we're so egoically, materialistically focused on the physical body, so much so. But when you're spiritual in nature like this, you understand your judgments are what make you ugly. Sorry. So if you think you're ugly, you inherently will be. I'm a firm believer in being able to change your physical appearance based on how you perceive yourself, because I've done it for myself as well. I'm not saying in such a huge significant way, but I have my own ways in which I had done it through my health and through my actual body, where I started loving my body more and seeing it change. And I actually really do love how I look now. So it's insane how much your judgments will get reflected back to you. The mirror is so scary in esoteric traditions because it reflects back to you your thoughts, not actual demons. The only demons that exist are the ones you create in your head, your judgments. So here, when he puts his face to the ground and bows, it means he releases his physical identification with his body. He's so in tune with his spirit. He doesn't need to greet these guys with his face. He knows who he is. He understands he's Christ consciousness. And just like you and I, when we manifest from a place of consciousness, when you say, oh, I want my dream job, and then after a couple of weeks, you finally are sitting at that desk and you're the head honcho of whatever company it is, of course you got that position. The same thing happened to me, not being a boss, but being in a position I genuinely love. And I wasn't surprised, maybe in the moment, because I was, with time, it not that you get numb to it, but you walk more in conviction, because you're like, of course this happened, because this is how I see life now. This is how I try to show up every day. It becomes a part of your character, right? It's not just a one-off experience. So here we have verse 3, and it says, and said, my Lord, if now I have found favor in thy sight, pass not away, I pray thee, from thy servant. Abraham is referring to himself as a servant. He's being a servant to these three men. And these three men are symbolic of the Lord, capital L-R-O-D, because the Lord sent those three men there. So he's just representing them in the physical. These three men are representing God in the physical flesh, right? So Abraham's saying, like, listen, I'm your servant, meaning I'm the intuition servant. And he's just kind of humbled that these people are giving him time. Imagine if a beautiful creation came down in the form of an angel, essentially, and was just like, hey, how's it going? Pretty sweet, right? I mean, that's only one way to look at it, but like, essentially anything that you're experiencing, it's like saying be grateful for it, You're still a servant to the intuition that brought you your desire to an extent. You're still a light worker of God. Don't make this an ego thing of, oh, it's all mine. Like, yes, it is, right? You're meant to be here to be the creator, but if you get over infatuated by seeing 3D results, that's when you fall from being a creator. And Abraham clearly is not wavering. He's humbling himself and saying that he's a servant of God, not the other way around. So we have verse 4, and it says, let a little water, I pray you, be fetched and wash your feet. So here Abraham is asking to get water because he wants to wash the feet of these three holy figures in front of them, and he wants them to rest under the tree because he wants them to relax. A tree is symbolic of bringing life. You have the tree of knowledge. You also have the tree of wisdom, the tree of life. I forget all of the names of them, but you understand what I'm saying. When you have a tree, it's just like, look how many acorns it can have. Look at how many seeds it can plant from just one little acorn. Look how many apples it can grow and how many seeds are in an apple. It's like overly crazily abundant. So long as we nature earth the way it's intended to, there's a plethora for everyone to share. So a tree is synonymous with abundance and rest and rejuvenation in life. Abraham wants to wash their feet because feet connected to the physical plane. And when you're connected to the physical plane, that's kind of like an allegory saying you're stuck in the nature in which keeps you dwelt in a 3D realm, meaning your mind. When you dwell in your mind, you're connected to the physical plane. And what you want to do is wash that lower nature of you and reconnect to your spirit. So that's why Jesus also washes the disciples' feet during the Last Supper. And that's why Abraham is also washing the feet of these three people that visit him, because he's humbling himself in one regard, but he's also giving the idea of purity and cleansing to somebody that's coming in his direction, or these people coming in his direction, to purify them as well, right? You reap what you sow. So verse 5, and I will fetch a morsel of bread and comfort ye your hearts. After that ye shall pass on. For therefore are ye come to your servant. And they said, so do as thou hast said. So here Abraham says, like, listen, I'm going to feed you a little bit of bread, and I know you guys are going to move on. And I know, like, you guys came to me and I'm your servant. So we have verse 5, and it says, and I will fetch a morsel of bread and comfort ye your hearts. After that ye shall pass on. For therefore are ye come to your servant. And they said, so do as thou hast said. So here Abraham's saying, like, I'm going to create for you, or get you, a piece of bread as a source of nourishment and comfort your hearts. After you guys will move on, knowing that this is a fleeting moment, I can't hold on to everything in permanence. For therefore are ye come to your servant, meaning that Abraham is coming to them as their servant, and they said, so do as thou hast said. So basically the men are encouraging Abraham, yes, please go about what you're doing. Please get us some bread. That would be lovely. Also understand offering bread symbolically is symbolic of nourishment, right? Because bread is one of the most, I guess, foundational foods in history throughout time. But when you look at the Eucharist or communion, you know that you have bread first and then you have wine. The reason why you eat bread first is because you have to recognize that you're a body first. You have to integrate into the 3D realm in totality before you witness the wine, the blood, or the spirit, right? You need to have an ego death. You need to understand that you aren't just your body by experiencing it, and then once you experience it, then you can witness your spirit, right? Your dark night of the soul makes you witness your spirit. So it's kind of like, to an extent, nodding at that as well. And then we have verse 6. And Abraham hastened into the tent unto Sarah and said, make ready quickly 3 measures of fine meal, knead it, and make cakes upon the hearth. Here Abraham is seeing Sarah, who's also in the tent, and says, please make 3 cakes for these guys. And he's also explaining the process. He says, take fine meal, knead it, and make cakes. Now, he could have just said bread. So the point that I want to make here is that Abraham is explaining a process. And typically when you're going through a process in something, it means alchemy. So here's kind of like an occult hermetic wink at, oh, there's something transforming here. Sarah is the divine feminine, which you can link to the element of fire, and fire is linked to the concept of spirit, and so is the divine feminine. So we have the concept of fire, and now you have cakes or fine meal, or linked to the idea of bread. Bread is symbolic of earth. Think of Cain and Abel when Cain offered a sheaf of wheat to God. He was offering him something material in nature, and that's why God said no. So here, the fact that Sarah is making something earthly means the earth element is involved, and she's doing it by alchemizing her spirit with it because she's undergoing the process of creating this. So now you have the principle of spirit or fire mixing with the principle of earth, and having an alchemization of these two elements, these two principles of the divine masculine and the divine feminine. The fact that Sarah's doing it means she's embodying this transformation. Keep in mind, Abraham has been out of the tent, but Sarah's still in it. She still somewhat doubts, but because she's undergoing this transformation, it means she's eventually going to get out of the tent, meaning getting out of her head or her lower nature. So we have verse 7. And Abraham ran onto the herd and fetched a calf tender and good and gave it unto a young man, and he hastened to dress it. Here, it's like kind of funny. Where is this young man coming from? You know, like if you take it literally, where did you just grab this guy? Like Abraham is just having this like meditation session in the middle of God knows where, some plain. And then there's no one else around him except for these three guys that randomly show up. And he's like, oh my God, wife, go make cakes for these guys, these strangers we don't know. And then he runs up to this random kid that's like walking down the street and is just like, you, get me a calf. And it's like, if you literally if you were to literally take this book in a literal sense, it wouldn't make sense. And that's why I kind of lean towards it symbolically, because it has so much more symbolism than it does literal value. Here, when you run into a herd of animals, it means you run into the animal nature of your thoughts, your overwhelming thoughts. And within your thoughts, you fetched a calf tender and good. Cows, symbolically speaking and spiritually speaking, are very nurturing. I forget in what culture or religion, but I know cows are sacred, and if like they're crossing on the highway, you have to stop and you have to wait for them to move, and sometimes it might take hours if not days, and you can't do anything about it. Like calves are tender, or calves are good because they're so nurturing. They provide for you milk. They're not gonna attack you. They're so docile. They'll make you butter. They'll make you cheese. Like it's just such a beautiful animal to have around, to give you life, to give you an extension of your vitality, right? And there's so much nutrients in the milk when it isn't pasteurized with all this chemical processing. Like if you were to have natural organic milk, like I didn't even know this, but I was thinking of tribes that just drink milk. I forget where this is, and they only go into town once a year to have like a solid meal. And when a cow grazes and eats all these different kinds of bitters and grass that doesn't have pesticides on it, and is really consuming the different greens, that kind of stuff alchemizes within the body and gets transmuted through the milk that the people of the village can drink. And they live on this stuff. And it's just like, here we are in America over-consuming, overindulging, and we think we know about nutrition when there's certain tribes like this that are thriving and look half their age in the sense of the masses of them, and meaning the majority, or like blue zone areas, and we wonder why we're so screwy in our health. It's like because we're focusing all on the wrong things. We need to go back to nature. But anyway, Abraham running into the herd is like him running into his thoughts, and he fetched only the most innocent and pure of thoughts, meaning a calf, so gentle, so sweet and willing to provide, and gave it unto a young man. When you think of a young man, man is symbolic of the ego or the thoughts. A young man is pure in his ego and his thoughts. So of course a young man had to fetch a young calf and then hastened to dress it, because these both of these concepts are doing it in an innocent way, right? Like they both mark the idea of a higher spiritual processes going on, because both of these entities being involved, meaning a calf and a young man, are innocent in nature. So he got his most innocent thoughts, got the most innocent part of himself, a young man, and then hastened to dress it to offer it to these three guys. Verse 8, and he took butter and milk and the calf which he had dressed and set it before them, and he stood by them under the tree, and they did eat. So here from the cow, what they had created, they got milk, they got butter. You can think of milk and butter kind of like the land of Canaan flowing with milk and honey, right? In my opinion, symbolically, that alludes to the idea of your pituitary and your pineal gland giving off that, like, what's that, the oil, the Christos, the milk and honey that goes down to either your sacral chakra or your root chakra, I don't know. Then it gets set back up and then hits your third eye, and you have this kundalini experience. It kind of embodies that kind of symbolism. And again, the calf is an innocent, cute offering of your thoughts, meaning the most natural, innocent version of you in an egoic sense, and set it before them. And he stood by them under the tree, and they did eat, meaning they nourished themselves with this stuff. They nourished themselves with higher nature thoughts. They took the butter, milk and butter actually, I think were symbolic of riches too back then. So it's like, because you had to have, having an animal is very expensive. So if you could afford to have an animal and you had a surplus, I mean, you were doing pretty good. So it's kind of a symbol of abundance, right? Verse 9, and they said unto him, where is Sarah thy wife? And he said, behold, in the tent. I love this verse because the guys that embody capital Lord, right, that were sent from God or cosmic energy, are like, by the way, where's your wife? And here, the reason why they ask is because wife is symbolic of emotions, and they don't call her anything else other than wife. Why don't they say, where is Sarah, right? Sarah means divine feminine because that's the archetype she represents. They specified wife. And the reason why they do that is because you're trying to hide your emotions in your tent, in your mind. And that, because that's what it means. Wife means emotions. So Abraham had to immediately give it up and say, behold, they're in the tent, which is an allegory for saying, like, they're within me. My emotions are within me. So if the three guys are saying, hey, where are your emotions? And Abraham has to just fess up. What it means is God always knows what you're feeling. Your energetic expression of your thoughts and feelings are always getting permeated. You cannot control them. All you can do is reprogram them, you know? So I thought that was cool because it basically means, like, you think you can run, but you can't, and you also can't hide, so good luck. So just keep in mind that, you know, you have to be mindful of what it is you're thinking and feeling. Verse 10, and he said, I will certainly return unto thee according to the time of life, and lo, Sarah thy wife shall have a son. And Sarah heard it in the tent door which was behind him. So here, Sarah's now in the tent door, which mirrors the idea of Abraham being in the tent door 10 verses earlier, right? In verse 1, or 9 verses earlier. The fact that Abraham did it first, right, means that masculine and physical, physical intention was taken first, right? You have to, like, you normally will be given divine inspiration. Something will hit you, or like you're gonna, I'm gonna go to the store today, and like what you want to manifest is a new job, and then you run into some guy and he's like, oh, by the way, do you want a job? Like, you had the inkling of intuition to go somewhere, so you answered, right? The fact that you went and physically did it is Abraham being the first one to sit in the door. The fact that Sarah is now sitting in the door later means your spirit is catching up to you. It means your spirit is going to give you more information. Your spirit's going to provide you with more abundance because you're finally listening to the intuition. You're finally going about it in a way of not questioning it, right? So now that Sarah's sitting in the tent door, she's behind Abraham, meaning, like, I'm following up on what the divine masculine is doing. Like, we're working together in tandem. We're moving the same amount. And here the three guys are basically saying, like, listen, during the time of life, meaning that at the amount of time it takes to have a child in 9 months, we're going to come back and you're going to have a son. And Sarah heard it in the tent door. And in verse 11, it says, now Abraham and Sarah were old and well stricken in age, and it ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of women. Here, it's like kind of funny, like out of nowhere, all of a sudden they were old. It's like, weren't they old before? Why are they saying this verse now? Why is it important now? And it's like, how out of nowhere did you just get old all of a sudden? You know what I mean? It's like verses like this are supposed to make you question what's really going on here. What are they really saying? So when it says Abraham and Sarah were old and stricken in age, and it ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of woman, what it means is their concepts and their judgments of themselves still doubt the capacity to receive Isaiah. And Isaiah to you is essentially what you want to create in your world, the son you want to bear from your mental womb, right? The seeds you plant in here will then get pressed back onto you in the 3D realm, but it starts in the 4D first. Here, Abraham and Sarah are doubting. They think they're old, right? And when you look at that symbolically, it means that you have a limitation concept in your head somewhere that's preventing you from receiving what you want. And it says, and it ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of women. Here, in my opinion, it means like the menstrual cycle, right? Like she hit menopause, so therefore that's her judgment on herself, thinking, I'm too old, I can't bear a child, which seems to literally be the case, right? But again, this is kind of the concept of like, there's nothing God can't do for you if you don't ask. Or there's nothing that God can't do for you if you just ask. That's what I meant to say. You have to be pure in what you're asking, and then watch a miracle happen, or watch your manifestation or your prayer be answered, because it will. You have to walk in conviction and then just see it unfold in front of you. So then we have verse 12, and it says, therefore Sarah laughed within herself, saying, after I am waxed old, shall I pleasure my Lord being old also? Meaning, can I really receive the abundance and joy of a son if I'm this old? And here it's like she's doubting herself. You know, when you laugh something off, it's because you're insecure. So she was kind of not really convinced that even though God was directly saying to her face, you're gonna have a kid, she's like, I don't know. Can you imagine doing that to God if he visited you in some defined form of 3 angelic men? You would be like, yes, right? But she's showing the sincere doubt that we have when we're going on our spiritual journey, thinking we shouldn't follow our intuition, right? It's the dual nature between the mind talking you out of your intuition, because your mind's meant to protect your body. Your mind can't predict the outcome of what your spirit has in store for you, so it perceives it as a threat. And it's as simple as that. Your intuition will give you inklings of what it's going to do next, but you have to follow, right? You have to take the physical action, the intuitive action, for then your spirit to catch up and show you what to do next after that. So then you have verse 13, and the Lord said unto Abraham, wherefore did Sarah laugh, saying, shall I of a surety bear a child which am old? Here God is saying, why did Sarah laugh at me, thinking, can she really have a child because she thinks she's old? Like here she's kind of mocking Sarah, being like, girl, are you insane? Like, did you not know I created you in this situation and the entire earth you're stepping on and everything outside of this earth, which is like infinite and keeps expanding and has insane amount of black holes and whatever else might be potentially out there? Like, this world or this universe keeps expanding, and you don't think I can provide for you a child? That might be one of the easiest things I can do for you, and yet you think I'm limited. Like, he's baffled essentially, right? So then we have verse 14, but again, that mirrors us, right? When we don't listen to our intuition, we're like, we don't know. And then like God is like, oh my God, like behind the scenes, he's literally face palming, being like, Susan, you need to wake up and listen to me. Like, you've been doing this for years. Keep showing up. You're there. You got it. You know what I mean? So here we have verse 14, and it says, is anything too hard for the Lord? At the time appointed, I will return unto thee according to the time of life, and Sarah shall have a son. So here, when it says the time appointed to life, it connotates to the idea of how long it takes to have a child, so 9 months. And it says, is like anything too hard for me? Are you seriously still doubting me? Like, trust me, the amount of time it takes to have a son, he's gonna show up. So just stop thinking that this ain't gonna happen, because it is, right? So then we have verse 15. Then Sarah denied, saying, I laughed not, for she was afraid. And he said, nay, but thou didst laugh. Again, such a good verse. Here, it points out Sarah was afraid. It's hysterical how God was just like, listen, you need to believe me, stop doubting me. And Sarah's like, I didn't doubt you. Are you kidding me? I would never doubt you. And go on YouTube, look at any of the manifestation communities, the Law of Assumption communities, Neville Goddard, whatever you want to do. You'll read the comments, they're like 50-50. Some people are doing great, other people are like, I'm doing everything right, I still don't have what I want. And it's like, you did laugh. Sorry, that's what it means here. It's just like, you didn't do everything right because you laughed at me. A part of you denied me, right? And it's just like Sarah, and Sarah denied, saying, I laughed not, because she was afraid. And the people that doubt themselves are typically afraid because they don't know what's going to happen when they change their lives, when they receive what they want. So it's very hard for somebody to receive change that's positive, because if you're used to living something negative and you're used to having a very limited mindset, it feels comfortable there because you're used to it. But just because you're used to it doesn't mean it's good for you, right? So that's why the fear comes in, because it's change. Verse 16, and it says, and the men rose up from thence and looked toward Sodom, and Abraham went with them to bring them on the way. So here again, when it says rose up, both of or all of them in unison looked up, meaning like they were in coherence with the spiritual nature of their crown chakra or the third eye, and they looked toward Sodom, the place of the wicked people, and Abraham went with them to bring them on the way, essentially escorting them towards that city in respect, letting them go, even though in a couple of verses before he was like, I'd love for you to stay, but he understands things are fleeting because that's life. So we have verse 17, and the Lord said, shall I hide from Abraham that thing which I do? And here God is kind of contemplating, saying, should I really show Abraham more of what my divine plan is for him, or should I hold back? I'm not so sure. And that's kind of like what God does for us. The more we show up in our spiritual journey, the more responsibility we have to our intuition, the harder it is to not listen to it, the more clearly we see things, right? So the soul is no longer a passive recipient, but a witness and a participant in the divine action that you need to take because the intuition is so strong. Verse 18, it says, seeing that Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. So here it's basically saying like, Abraham is doing so well. It's not just him that's going to like embody this whole Christ awareness capacity, because he's showing how you can transcend your ego through all of the things he had gone through, right? He's proven himself time and time again. And he's going to do so many good things by passing on this legacy of thought to his offspring, right? To his predecessors or whatever comes after you, your children. And he's going to make this the new way of thinking, essentially like this, listening to people who might talk about the Bible, mystic text, to bring you back more conscious awareness. It's passing down the information for somebody to think about and to use to their advantage to then embody more conscious awareness for themselves. So it's like generously giving the information you're already embodying and understanding. So here God is like, should I really hide this from him? Because he's going to do so great, and I see this potential in him, and he's already a mighty nation, and more nations are going to come after him. I have to share with him my divine plan. Like, it's just there. So again, the more you show up, the more God will show up for you. Verse 19, for I know him, that he will command his children and his household after him, and they shall keep the way of the Lord to do justice and judgment, which is the law of cause and effect, or karma, that the Lord may bring upon Abram that which he hath spoken of him. So he's basically, again, just reiterating, I know Abraham's character, I trust him. He won't just follow me himself. He will pass on his legacy to his children and tell them to follow capital Lord, or karmic law, and understand the way to play with electricity, right? If you understand the law of manifestation and how it works, and you embody the concept of being a conscious creator, knowing the dual nature of your spirit and your mind, you know how to play with electricity. However, when you fall asleep to your judgment and your 3D reality because your 5 senses hijacked your spirit, and now you're falling victim to what you see with your 2 eyes rather than your 1, now you're going to get shocked, because now you're going to have an emotional reaction to something that was already played out in your 3D realm, right? This is the current state of what actually exists, and the 3D realm is just an after response. This is already old news happening in front of you. So verse 20, and the Lord said, because the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because their sin is very grievous, verse 21, I will go down now and see whether they have done altogether according to the cry of it, which is come unto me, and if not, I will know. So here God is basically saying, I'm going to go visit Sodom and Gomorrah because I hear a lot of like this noise about how wicked and terrible it is, but I really want to see if it's as terrible as I hear, right? Like, is the rumor true, essentially? And what you can relate this to is basically like justice will respond when it needs to. So think of a kid coming home from school and is like, Mom and Dad, this girl's bullying me, I don't like her. And then the parents call the school, and it turns out that no girl is bullying the son. It's actually the child that made the complaint is bullying others. Justice will not be given to this child. It's just like it'll get a repercussion from the parents being like, don't do that, you're a liar. However, if the child comes home and is like, Mom and Dad, I'm getting bullied, and there in fact are bullies in school, karmic law will then come, because the people that are bullying are putting out the negative energy, which will then come back to them, right? So basically God is like enforcing the idea of karmic law. Like if they deserve it, they will get punished, but if they don't, obviously they're not putting that energy out in the world, so they can't possibly get it back. Verse 22, and the men turned their faces from thence and went toward Sodom, but Abraham stood yet before the Lord. And Abraham drew near and said, wilt thou also destroy righteous with the wicked? And here, sorry, that was verse 23. Here Abraham is saying, like, now that the guy's left and Abraham is talking to cosmic force energy in itself, he's really having like this contemplation thought within his meditation. And he's just like, is it really moral to destroy people who are inherently bad that have inherently good people nearby them, right? That's the literal way to look at this. But you have to understand you have righteousness and wickedness within you as well. It depends which one is more dominant in your expression. If you have wickedness in you, you have to have righteousness in you, because you wouldn't know wicked without understanding righteous. So what part of you is greater? And that part of you that's greater is going to get a reflection back to you, right? So Abraham here is having a very human response. He's like, do you really have to get rid of the good? Well, like, because the good is good, you can get rid of the bad. He's having a judgment. Good and bad doesn't exist, right? God is no respecter of persons. And what that means is God doesn't care what you do. You have free will. So Abraham is having like this connection to his morality, saying you have to keep the good part of you alive. But it's just like, no, there's a death and rebirth cycle in all of us. Even though there's good parts of you at a certain aspect in your time when you're going through your dark night of the soul experience, it doesn't mean that good part of you then is better than the good part of you now. No, it had to undergo change too. So, and I would bet you would much rather it go through change. And I would much rather bet that you wouldn't want to be the same good person you were then, because you're a hell of a lot better now because of the hardship. So here it's like Abraham's kind of half-assing the punishment. He's like, are you sure you're going to get punished? And karma doesn't care. God is no respecter of persons, and neither is karma. They're one and the same. You reap what you sow, right? You give what you get, and you get what you give. So we have verse 24, peradventure there be 50 righteous within the city, wilt thou also destroy and not spare the place for the 50 righteous there that are therein? And peradventure means maybe. It's just like a fancy way to say possibly. So here Abraham's haggling with God. He's just like, God, but listen to me, okay? If there's 50 righteous people in the city, will you not destroy it? Will you keep it safe? And God's just like in the next verse here, wait, let me go, verse 25. That be far from thee to do after this manner, to slay the righteous with the wicked, and that the righteous should be as the wicked. That be far from thee. Shall not the judge of all the earth do right? And then verse 26, and the Lord said, if I find in Sodom 50 righteous within the city, then I shall spare the place, then I will spare all the place for their sakes. So here, Abraham is basically saying, hey, if I find 50 good people in there, will you keep it alive and well and okay, and you won't touch it? And God essentially says yes. When you look at verse 25, it says, shall not the judge of all the earth do right? Here, Abraham is claiming he knows what the truth is. There is no right and there is no wrong. The truth is not yours to claim. You only have the matter of observation and your opinion in what you claim to be true. So his opinion of what is right and wrong is a moral construct, and that has nothing to do with cause and effect. Because if it did, good people would get good things always, and bad people would have bad things happen to them always, but that's not how it works. Bad people who are indoctrinated to believe they are untouchable will remain untouchable. Good people who remain impoverished in their thought and believing that they're not capable of receiving anything good in this world will remain in poverty. That's just the law. It's about your energetic expression and your judgment towards yourself. So here Abraham is having a human moment, wanting to save anybody in the city who's righteous, because he's a very moral person. But the law of karma, again, is no respecter of persons, doesn't care what you do or don't do. So you have to get your head out of the idea that morality is what guides you in life. It doesn't. Love is a beautiful feeling, but it doesn't, to an extent, it doesn't judge everything. Because if it did, if love and morality was worked in tandem to balance out the world, we'd be balanced, but we're corrupt more than ever. And we need to wake up to the idea of playing with the idea of manifestation and getting back the power of our attention, because our attention is what creates reality in front of us. So we have verse 27, and Abraham answered and said, behold, now I have taken upon me to speak unto the Lord, which am but dust and ashes. Here, when he says, I am but dust and ashes, means that he is essentially saying, like, listen, I know I don't know best. I'm just this measly little scrub on the side, right? That's what dust and ashes means. He's like, I know I'm nothing compared to you. But he follows up in verse 28, peradventure there shall lack 5 of 50 righteous. Wilt thou destroy all the city for lack of 5? And he said, if I find there 40 and 5, I will not destroy it. Then verse 29 says, hey, if there's 40 found there, will you kill them? And then he's like, I won't do it for 40's sake. Verse 30 is like, what if there's 30? And God says, I won't do it if there's 30. Verse 31, what if 20 are found there? And he's like, I'm not going to do it if 20 are found there. Then in verse 32 it says, oh Lord, let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak yet but this once. Peradventure 10 shall be found there. And he said, I will not destroy it for 10's sake. Here, Abraham is so desperate and needy. In the beginning, he's like, look, I'm just dust and ashes. Like, I know I'm a scrub, but if I find 45 people there that are righteous, will you keep the city up and going? Is it going to be okay? And God's like, fine, I won't destroy it. And then he's like, well, what if there's only 30? The fact that you keep going down shows how insecure you are of believing that there's anyone righteous there in the first place, which is probably why Sodom and Gomorrah falls to shambles anyway, because his judgment of Sodom and Gomorrah here symbolically is proven. He knows there isn't anyone worth saving over there, right? He wouldn't have to cut his numbers down so much if he inherently felt and knew and was convinced, which just relates to the idea of having faith, because faith and conviction equal the same thing. They mean the same thing. If he was convinced that they were good people, he wouldn't be bartering with God, right? And here, this is begging. This is praying without embodying your prayer. When you pray for somebody outside of you to help you, to save you, your prayers will not be answered. When you go within and walk with conviction, which just means you know you're a conscious creator and you're going to get what you want because that's what you want to experience, it will happen to you, right? You do not waver, you do not shake. No one can shake you. He's easily shaken here. And the fact that he started with 5 and went down to 1, there's a lot of symbolism in the numerology. When you have the number 50, that I look back and it's the year of the Jubilee, and this marks a restoration of renewal, a time of spiritual cleansing and freedom. So the fact that he started with 50, it means, it kind of foreshadows the idea of like, look, Sodom and Gomorrah has to fall apart, but there's no such thing as death, because if you understand tarot and the card in tarot, all that means is rebirth. When something dies, there's change, right? If we never had winter, we could never experience summer. It would just be a dry, dead zone. There would be no life. You need to have the reincarnation cycle to produce more life, right? Evolution to an extent. So the fact that he started with 50 means renewal and restoration, and the spiritual cleansing and freedom within yourself. And the fact that he went down to 10 in Greek is relates to the word deca, and deca means completion. So when you complete a cycle, right, the point of you starting was renewing your spiritual journey for the year of the Jubilee. Then you went down to 10, which is a completion of the cycle, right? You have 1, which is symbolic of the beginning, and then you have 0, obviously, which is, just 0, so numerologically it's just 1. But after 9 is 10, and that's the completion, and then that's also the new beginning because you get rid of the 0 in numerology. So here it's just talking about the closing of a cycle, meaning the closing of Sodom and Gomorrah, the end of their wickedness. And then you have verse 33, and the Lord went his way as soon as he had left communing with Abraham, and Abraham returned unto his place. Here it says the Lord went his way, meaning he's closing out his communication here, his meditation, because he's done communing here. Abraham closed the portal in which is your third eye when you commune with your intuition, and he returned onto his place, meaning the physical plane, right? His physical body. He went back to just being consciously aware of what's in front of him rather than dwelling in his spirit and connecting with his intuition. So that's what I made of chapter 18 in Genesis. I hope you guys liked it. Let me know what you think. And feel free to follow me on TikTok for short form content. I also have Facebook and Instagram. Facebook, I post some blog posts that I look into esoteric, hermetic stuff that I find interesting and point out some symbolic things that I really enjoy learning about, and I hope shines some light for anyone out there who's also seeking information to learn more about the mystery of life. Much like myself. Trust me, I don't know everything 100%. I'm learning all the time, and the more I learn, the less I know. So with that being said, thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.